Elara was 19 when the river rose and broke the town. She had nothing, no money, no job, no home. But one day, she stood before her class and spoke clear English. This is the story of how simple words and hard work changed everything. Elara woke before sunrise and watched the pale sky. The wind was quiet, and the street was empty. She put on her old coat and tied her hair back. She walked to the market with slow, careful steps. In her bag, she carried bread from a kind neighbor. She needed to sell it for rent and dinner. She reached a small table near the bus stop. Cars passed by and people were rushing to work. The morning was cold, and her hands felt stiff. She set the bread out in neat rows. She wrote a small sign with a black marker. "Fresh bread. Please help." A man stopped and looked at the bread. He was tall, with gentle eyes and a soft voice. "Good morning," he said. "How much is this loaf?" "2," Elara said. She was tired, but she tried to smile. He nodded and put coins on the table. "My name is Rowan," he said. "You are here every day." "I try," Elara said. "I need work. I need money for my family." Rowan looked at her sign again. "Do you like to read?" he asked. Elara looked down and took a breath. "I like books," she said, "but I do not read fast. I want to learn English better. I want a good job one day." Rowan smiled a little. "There is a small school on Hill Street," he said. "They teach English in the evening. It is not expensive. You can try it." Elara felt a warm spark in her chest. "Thank you," she said. "I will try." The day moved slowly, and clouds covered the sun. People were walking past, and buses were roaring by the table. Elara sold half of the bread before noon. She counted the coins and put them in a small tin. The tin looked old, but it kept the money safe. "Dreams are not free," she whispered as she held the tin. "You have to work for them." That afternoon, she went to Hill Street and found the school. The building was small, but the windows were bright. Inside, a woman wrote simple words on a whiteboard. A few students sat in chairs and watched the board with care. Elara stood at the door and waited. The woman turned and waved. "Come in," she said. "I am Miss Lida." "What is your name?" "Elara," she said. "I want to learn English." Miss Lida gave her a book with short stories. "We read and we speak," she said. "We use simple words and clear sentences. Sit anywhere you like." Elara took a seat and opened the book. The words looked kind and clean. The lines were short, and the meaning was clear. "Ad carte." She read a few sentences and felt calm. She moved her finger under each line. The room was quiet, and the clock was ticking. After class, Elara stayed and asked one question. "How can I learn faster?" she said. Miss Lida smiled. "Read every day," she said. "Speak every day. Write your thoughts in a small notebook. Keep going, even when it is hard." Elara walked home under a gray sky. She was tired, but her mind was awake. She thought of her family and their small room. She thought of rent and food and jobs. She thought of her dream and felt fragile hope. "Nothing is free," she thought. "I must fight for my dream." The next morning, she returned to the market. The air smelled like rain, and the road was wet. She set her bread out in 2 neat lines. People moved fast, and feet splashed in puddles. She called out to a few passers-by with a gentle voice. "Fresh bread, 2 coins." A woman stopped and picked a loaf. "Where is your shop?" the woman asked. "I do not have a shop," Elara said. "I sell here each day. I hope to open a small bakery one day." The woman raised an eyebrow. "A bakery without money," she said. "That is not easy." Elara felt her face grow warm. She took a breath and stood straight. "It is not easy," she replied firmly, "but I will try." The woman sighed and walked away. Elara watched her go and held the tin close. She felt a small pain under her ribs. She looked at the sky and blinked away a tear. "Will I give up?" she thought. "What will I do now?" In the afternoon, Rowan came back with a paper bag. "I have flour you can use," he said. "I had extra in my store. Take it." "I cannot take it for free," Elara said. "It is not free," Rowan said. "You will pay me with bread when you can." Elara laughed a little. "Then it is a fair trade," she said. She went home and baked at night while the city slept. The room was warm and the oven hummed quietly. Dough rose in bowls near the window. Steam filled the air, and the smell was sweet. Elara worked with careful hands and steady breath. She baked simple loaves and small rolls with love. She remembered her key phrase and whispered it again. "Nothing is free," she said. "I will earn my dream." 2 weeks passed and she kept her routine. "Not yours or car." She sold bread in the morning and studied at night. She read short stories in clear English. She wrote small notes about her day. She spoke to kind strangers at the table. She practiced new words with a calm voice. She moved slowly, but she did not stop. Then trouble came, as trouble often came. A man in a dark jacket watched her from the corner. His eyes were cold and his mouth was thin. He walked near the table when Elara turned away. When she looked back, her tin was gone. Elara froze and felt the ground tilt. She searched under the table with shaking hands. She looked inside the bag and inside the box. The tin was not there. The money for rent was gone. Her breath came fast, and her face turned pale. A woman saw the panic and asked, "What happened?" "My money," Elara said. "Someone took it." The woman shook her head. "I am sorry," she said. "I did not see anything." Elara sat on the low curb and stared at the street. A bus rolled by and rain began to fall. Drops hit the bread and the cardboard sign. Her heart sank as water soaked the edges. "How can I survive this?" she thought. "Will I give up?" Rowan found her there, wet and silent. He put his coat over her shoulders. "Come," he said. "We will dry the bread. We will box what we can save." In his small back room, they stacked the bread in clean crates. The light was yellow and warm on the walls. Elara wiped her face and sat on a wooden stool. Rowan made tea and set it on the table. "Someone took my rent," Elara said. "I have nothing." Rowan looked kind but firm. "You have your hands," he said. "You have your voice. You have your mind. You can still work." Elara looked at the steam and listened to the rain. "Dreams are not free," she said in a low voice. "I have to work for them." Rowan nodded. "Yes," he said. "You have already started." The next day, she went back to the market with a new tin. She tied it to the table with a thin chain. She watched the street with clear eyes. She stood taller and spoke louder. "Fresh bread," she called. 2 coins. A man in a gray suit stopped. He looked at the chain and smiled. "You learn fast," he said. Elara met his eyes. "I try," she said. "I do not give up." The man took a loaf and paid. "I am Dr. Hale," he said. "I work at the clinic near the bridge. We need simple food for our patients in the morning. Can you bring 20 small rolls each day?" Elara felt light for a moment. "Yes," she said. "I can do that." For a week, she woke even earlier to bake. The stars were fading when she shaped the rolls. The oven was warm, and the room was glowing. Steam rose from pans like soft clouds. She set the hot rolls in a basket and walked to the clinic. Nurses opened the door and smiled at the smell. She earned a little more, and the rent was paid. She bought more flour and saved a small part. She wrote numbers in a small notebook each night. The lines were neat, and the totals were clear. She saw a path forming in the simple marks. It was a slow path, but it was a true path. Nothing worth having came easy, she thought, as she closed the book. I must keep going. One afternoon, a man named Drex came to the market. His shoes were sharp, and his smile was thin. He looked at Elara's table and then at the street. He held a bright flyer with gold letters. Good day, he said. I am opening a modern bakery here. It will be across the street. We will sell fine cakes and rich coffee. People will come to us, not to you. Elara felt a chill in her arms. There is space for more than one shop, she said. Drex laughed quietly. People like new things, he said. Your bread is simple and plain. Do not expect them to come. He walked away and handed out flyers to a small crowd. Bright colors flashed as the papers moved from hand to hand. Music played from a speaker near a truck. Drex shook hands and posed for photos. He moved like a king on a new street. Elara watched and bit her lip. She felt small and weak in that moment. Her table looked dull beside the bright truck. The bread looked old under the cold light. What will I do now? She thought. How can I face this? That night, the rain was falling hard. Elara sat at her table with the book open. The room was quiet and a pot was singing on the stove. Her family slept in the other room. Her eyes moved slowly across the page. She thought to herself, nothing is free. I must fight for my dream. I do not stop now. She wrote the words on a clean page. She wrote them again in larger letters. She put the page on the wall near the door. The next morning, she changed her table. She made a new sign with clear words. Warm bread, fair price, fresh every morning. She laid a clean cloth and set small paper bags. She smiled at each person who came close. She said, good morning, with steady voice and bright eyes. Drex's music was loud across the street. People stood in a line by the new door. A man in a black apron poured strong coffee. The smell was rich and thick in the air. A boy handed out cards for a discount. Laughter rose and then fell like waves. A little girl pulled her mother toward Elara's table. I like this bread, the girl said. It smells like home. Elara bent down and smiled at the girl. Thank you, she said. This bread is made with care. The mother hesitated and looked at Drex's long line. She looked back at Elara's warm smile. We will take 2 loaves, she said. Elara wrapped the bread and took their coins. She felt a small flame grow inside her chest. She stood a little taller and called out again. Warm bread, fair price. Drex crossed the street and frowned. You think a cloth and a smile will save you? He said. He said, you are naive. Elara kept her calm. I will not speak badly about you, she said. I will only do my best work. Drex leaned in. You will break, he said in a low voice. You will see. He left, and Elara breathed out slowly. Her hands shook for a moment. She pressed them together and looked at the sky. Will I give up? She thought. What will I do if this gets worse? Days passed, and the market found its rhythm again. Some people went to Drex for cakes and coffee. Some people returned to Elara for simple warm bread. The clinic kept its order for small rolls. Rowan still came by with flour and kind words. One evening at school, Ms. Leda gave a speaking task. Tell a story from your week, she said. Use past simple. Use clear sentences. Elara stood and held the small book. I sold bread near the bus stop, she said. A man opened a bakery across the street. I felt fear. I worked harder. I spoke to people with a kind voice. Some people came back to me. I did not stop. Ms. Lita nodded. Very good, she said. You use simple words with power. After class, a student named Amira walked beside Elara. You speak with heart, Amira said. You will do well. Elara smiled. Thank you, she said. Amira took her hand for a moment. Fear is not a stop sign, she said. It is a message. It says, be careful, but continue. Elara went home and thought about the words. She lit a small candle and opened her notebook. She wrote a new line under her list. You earn your dream, she wrote. You do not find it. The next week brought a storm and a broken oven. The light went out as dough rose in bowls. The room went dark and the air grew cold. The oven clicked and then went silent. Elara touched the switch and felt her heart sink. She called Rowan with shaking fingers. My oven died, she said. I have 20 rolls to bake for the clinic. Rowan thought for a second. Bring the trays to my store, he said. I have a small oven in the back. We can bake there. Elara put a coat over the dough and ran through the rain. Water hit her face and ran into her eyes. Her shoes were heavy and wet on the road. She reached Rowan's back door and knocked hard. Rowan opened the door and pulled her in. We will bake fast, he said. We will make it. They worked while the rain beat on the roof. The oven was hot and steam rose quickly. Elara shaped the dough with quick hands. Rowan moved the trays with steady arms. The rolls came out golden and warm. They boxed them while the storm roared outside. Elara carried the boxes to the clinic before dawn. Nurses cheered when they saw the warm rolls. Dr. Hale came out and pressed her hands. You saved the morning, he said. You proved that success is not given. It is earned. Elara walked home in the soft light of morning. The sky was pink and the road shone with rain. She felt tired but strong. She repeated her key phrase with steady breath. Remember, she said, nothing in life is free. Everything must be earned with hard work. But when she reached her street, she saw a new sign. A man stood by her door with a paper in his hand. He wore a stiff jacket and had a blank face. He pointed at the paper and then at her door. You are late on last month's fee, he said. If you miss again, you must leave. Elara felt the world tilt once more. I paid yesterday, she said. I gave the money to the office. The man shrugged. That is not my problem, he said. I only deliver the message. He left, and the paper shook in Elara's hand. She walked inside and sat on the floor. The room was quiet and the candle was cold. Her family watched her with worried eyes. Her little brother asked, Will we be okay? Elara looked at him and felt her throat tighten. I do not know, she said in a small voice, but I will try. She went to her wall and touched the page with the big letters. Nothing is free, she whispered. I must work for this life. I must work for this home. The next day, she went to the office with her notebook. She showed the numbers and the dates. The clerk looked bored and slow. He turned pages and yawned. He finally found a mistake in their system. You are paid, he said. It is fixed. Elara walked out into the sun and closed her eyes. Warmth touched her face and eased her shoulders. She stood very still and took one long breath. Then she opened her eyes and walked back to the market. There, a new flyer hung on a pole. Grand contest, it said. Bake the best simple bread. Winner gets a small oven. Elara touched the paper and read it twice. The date was in 2 weeks. The rules were short and clear. Simple ingredients. Simple method. clean shape. She stared at the last line and felt hope rise again. This is my chance, she thought. This is my path. Rowan came to her side and read the flyer. You should enter, he said. Your bread is honest. Your hands are steady. Elara nodded slowly. I will enter, she said. I will do my best. Drex walked by with his thin smile. You expect to win with flour and water? He asked. My kitchen is full of machines. My cakes are art. Elara met his eyes with calm strength. It is a simple bread contest, she said. I know simple bread. Drex laughed and moved on. Elara turned back to her table and wrote a plan. She listed times to test the recipe. She listed costs and notes and steps. She left nothing to chance that day. She worked and she learned and she moved. At night the house was quiet and the city was sleeping. Elara was practicing her speech for the contest. She stood in the small room and spoke to the wall. My bread is simple, she said. It is warm and kind. It feeds families. It feeds hope. She paused and listened to the rain in the distance. She took a breath and spoke again with a firm voice. I started with nothing but a dream. I worked every day. I failed and learned. I did not stop. This bread is my story. Her thoughts grew heavy as midnight came closer. Doubts rose like cold fog in a field. Who am I to speak, she thought. Who am I to win? Elara thought to herself, will I give up now? What will I do if I lose? She looked at the page on the wall with the big letters. The letters were simple, but they were strong. She read them again and felt the strength return. Nothing is free, she said. I will earn my dream. I will stand in the light and speak in clear English. Outside, the wind was rising over the roofs. Inside, Elara stood still with her hands open. She was tired, but she was ready. She was afraid, but she was brave. Morning would come, and the contest would begin. Judges would taste and judge and speak. Drex would smile, and crowds would clap. Elara would carry her bread in both hands. She would look at the room with calm eyes. How would the story turn at the next page? Would Elara win the oven she needed? What would she do if the prize went to someone else? She closed her eyes and held her breath for a moment. Then she opened them and spoke into the quiet room. Dreams are not free, she said softly. But I am not free either, if I do not try. On the morning of the contest, Elara woke before the moon left. The city was dark, and the wind was cold and clean. She packed flour, salt, and a small tin of yeast. She wrapped her tools in a cloth and tied it tight. She kissed her brother's hair and stepped into the street. The road was wet, and lights were blinking like sleepy eyes. She walked to the stop and waited for the first bus. The bus did not come, and minutes slipped away like sand. She looked at her watch and felt fear rise in her chest. What will I do now? She thought. Will I miss this chance? She took a breath and started to run. Her shoes hit puddles, and water jumped around her ankles. Her bag was heavy, but her steps were steady. She reached the hall when the sky turned gray. A guard stood at the door and held up his hand. The list is closed, he said. You are late. Elara felt the world press on her shoulders. Please, she said with a calm voice. The bus was late. I walked here from the bridge. I have the simple bread for the simple contest. A woman with silver hair heard them and stepped close. I am Judge Cerise, she said. What is your name? Elara, she said. I bake each morning for the clinic. I sell near the bus stop. Judge Cerise looked at her eyes and at the wet shoes. She looked at the steady hands. Let her enter, she said. She is here with work, Not words. Elara bowed her head and whispered, "Thank you." She moved to a clean table and set down her tools. Other bakers were already mixing and shaping dough. Drek stood at a long table near the front. His bowls were metal and bright. His apron was new and stiff. He looked at Elara and smiled without warmth. "You almost missed it," he said. "Pressure can break people like you." Elara met his eyes and kept her breath slow. "I shape dough," she said softly. "Pressure shapes me too." She measured water and salt with care. She poured the flour like dry snow into a bowl. She mixed with her hands until the dough came together. It felt soft and a little sticky. She reached for the salt again and froze. The small packet was not in the cloth. Her heart jumped and her mouth went dry. "How can I fix this?" she thought. "Will my bread die without salt?" She closed her eyes and searched the bag again. Her fingers found a flat packet near the bottom seam. It was small and warm from her hand. She tore it open and added the salt. The dough turned smooth under her palms. She exhaled and pressed gently. "Dreams are not free," she whispered. "You have to work for them." Ovens were humming along the far wall. Heat filled the hall like a slow wave. People were talking in low voices and wiping their hands. A boy watched from a window with his chin on the sill. He pressed his nose to the glass and smiled at the smell. Elara shaped 2 long loaves with simple lines. She set them on a tray and waited for room in the oven. The oven door opened, and a rush of heat kissed her face. She slid the loaves inside and closed the door. The clock ticked, and her heart kept time with it. Then a loud bell rang, and lights flashed red. A false alarm pulled people toward the exits. Staff checked doors and wires with quick hands. Ovens turned off in a row, and the room went quiet. Steam faded from the air, and time bent like a thin stick. Elara watched the clock and felt the fear return. "Will my bread bake in time?" she thought. "What can I do now?" Judge Cerise spoke into a small speaker. "Please stay calm," she said. "The ovens will restart in 10 minutes. The time will be cut. You must adapt." Elara looked at her half-baked loaves and made a choice. She pulled them out and cut them into smaller pieces. She shaped 8 small batons with clean hands. She scored each top with a careful knife. "Small loaves bake fast," she murmured. "Small steps still move me forward." Drex watched and laughed under his breath. "You are making panic bread," he said. "It will look poor beside my art." Elara did not answer. She was working while he was speaking. The oven started again with a deep, warm sound. She slid the small loaves in and closed the door. She set a timer and cleaned her table. She wiped her knife and folded the cloth. She stood still and let the heat do its work. The boy at the window waved at her and smiled again. "Your bread smells like mornings with Grandma," he said through the small gap. Elara felt her eyes warm and her heart grow steady. "Thank you," she said. "I bake to feed families. I bake to feed hope." The timer rang and she opened the door. Steam rose in soft white clouds from the tray. The loaves were gold with thin, crisp skin. She tapped one and listened for the clear sound. It sang like a small bell in a quiet room. She set them on a rack and rubbed her arms. "You earn your dream," she thought. "You do not find it on the ground." Judges moved along tables with small plates and pens. They spoke in low voices and took careful bites. A man with a sharp beard frowned at simple bread. A woman with kind eyes smiled at the warm crust. Judge Cerise took a piece and broke it with a soft crack. She smelled it and then tasted it with closed eyes. Elara stood straight and watched their faces. "Tell us your bread," Judge Cerise said. Use clear words. Speak from your work. Elara took a breath and looked at the small loaves. This bread is simple, she said. It has flour, water, salt, and yeast. It is warm and kind. It is strong enough for a long day. It is soft enough for a child. I baked smaller shapes because time was cut. Small loaves baked fast and stayed honest. I started with nothing, but I worked each day. I failed and learned. I did not stop. This bread is my story. The man with the sharp beard nodded once. The crust is thin and true, he said. The crumb is even. The salt is gentle. The woman with kind eyes looked at Elara. Your choice under pressure showed skill, she said. Xiao, your words matched your work. Drex rolled a cart toward the judges. His cakes stood tall with glassy glaze. Gold dust shone under the lights like a thin sun. People gasped at the shine and took photos with raised arms. Drex bowed and spoke with smooth pride. This is modern art, he said. This is a new city on a plate. The judges tasted the cake and wrote notes. They moved slower and looked at the layers. The man with the sharp beard smiled a little. The woman with kind eyes looked thoughtful. Judge Cerise kept her face calm and clean. The crowd pressed close as the judges took the stage. Lights glowed on the banners at the back wall. The boy at the window stood now near the front. Nurses from the clinic waved at Elara from the side. Rowan stood in the back with flour on his sleeves. Ms. Leda and Amira came in with bright eyes and small cheers. Elara felt their silent hands lift her up inside. Judge Cerise spoke first with a clear, bright voice. We saw skill today, she said. We saw courage under pressure. We saw art and we saw honesty. She held a card and read the first name. The show prize goes to Drex for his fine cakes. The crowd clapped and music rose for a moment. Drex stepped forward and bowed with a thin smile. He lifted the ribbon and waved to the cameras. Elara clapped too, with quiet, kind hands. Her heart was heavy, but it did not break. What will I do now? She thought. Will I give up because I did not win? Judge Cerise lifted her hand, and the hall grew quiet again. There is also a craft prize, she said. It is for simple bread made with skill and heart. It is for work that served a real day and a real home. It is for honest change under hard time. She looked at Elara and smiled with her eyes. The craft prize goes to Elara for warm, simple bread. For a second, Elara did not move. Then the room lifted her with sound. Rowan clapped with loud, proud hands. The nurses cheered with happy voices. Miss Leda and Amira hugged each other and laughed. The boy jumped and waved both arms. Elara walked to the stage with small steps and steady breath. She held the ribbon and her fingers shook. Judge Cerise leaned in and spoke softly. Success is not given, she said. You earned this. A sponsor stepped up with a small oven on a cart. It was not new, but it was strong and clean. The metal shone like calm water under light. Elara touched the handle and felt its solid weight. Tears pressed at the edges of her eyes. Dreams are not free, she said into the quiet. Moser, my for, but I paid with work, and I will pay again. Drex stood at the side with the show ribbon in his hand. His smile was thin and tight now. He looked at the craft oven and at the crowd. He lifted his chin and turned away. Elara carried the oven home with help from Rowan. The road was long, but the weight felt good. The clinic doors opened when they passed, and people cheered. The boy ran beside them for a block, and then waved. The sky was soft blue, and the wind was kind. When they reached the room, her family came to the door. Bonjour, Sioctor Shenri, Her brother touched the oven with wide eyes. "We will be okay," he said. Elara smiled and nodded. "We will work," she said. "We will earn." The next week, she moved from the curb to a small corner. Rowan found a cheap space near the clinic and the school. They cleaned the walls and washed the floor. They painted the window with simple letters. "Elara's bread," it said. "Warm." Amira came after class to help wrap and count. Miss Letta stopped by to buy a loaf with a bright smile. Dr. Hale placed a bigger order for the mornings. The new oven hummed and glowed with steady heat. Elara woke before dawn and baked with calm hands. The room smelled like warm fields and quiet hope. She set out rolls in neat rows and opened the door. People came in with soft steps and left with warm bags. Drex crossed the street one day and stood at the door. His eyes were tired, and his voice was low. "You have a line," he said. "I did not expect this." Elara wiped her hands and looked at him with care. "People come for simple bread," she said. "It feeds their day." Drex watched the counter and then looked at the floor. "I could pay you to bake for me," he said. "You could make bread in my back room." Elara thought for a moment and then shook her head. "I will not hide my name," she said. "I will do my own work." Drex nodded once and left without a word. The bell on the door rang softly behind him. Elara felt the old fear rise for a moment and then fall. She turned back to the oven with a steady mind. Weeks passed, and English class moved to new lessons. Miss Letta asked her to stand and speak to the group. "Tell us your path," she said. "Use simple words and speak slow." Elara stood at the front with her hands by her sides. "I started with nothing but a dream," she said. "I sold bread by the road. I studied at night. I failed, and I learned. I did not stop. I worked each day. I spoke with people. I kept my promise to myself. Dreams are not free. You must earn them." The class listened with quiet faces and warm eyes. Amira wiped a tear and smiled like dawn. "You are strong," she said. "You speak from the heart." Elara walked home under a clear sky. Stars were out like small candles on dark water. The city was quiet and the air was sweet. She thought of the first cold morning by the bus stop. She thought of the stolen tin and the broken oven. She thought of the false alarm and the small loaves. She thought of the stage and the ribbon and the simple oven. Nothing worth having came easy, she thought. But this is mine because I earned it. Months later, the small shop grew warm and steady. A student came from the Hill Street School with a flyer. "We need a teacher for a basic class," he said. "We need someone who speaks with clear words." Elara read the flyer and felt her heart open. She looked at the oven and at the door. She looked at her hands and at the clock. She nodded with a slow, full breath. "I can do this in the evenings," she said. "I will bake in the morning and teach at night." The first time she stood before the class, the room held its breath. She saw young eyes and old eyes and brave eyes. She wrote simple words on a whiteboard with a calm hand. She spoke slow and clear and kind. "This is a basic class," she said. "We will read and speak. We will write thoughts in small books. We will keep going, even when it is hard." Rowan sat in the back for the first lesson and smiled. Miss Lita stood at the door and nodded with pride. Dr. Hale sent a note that said, "Well done." Amira brought tea in paper cups for the break. "I would cursing shows." Elara felt her voice grow strong and warm. She looked at the class and saw her old self in each face. She thought of the river that broke the town, and her first cold day. She thought of stones in the road and hands that helped. She thought of her promise and her path. "Remember," she said to the class, "nothing in life is free. Everything good is earned with work. You can do this. You can earn your dream." She walked home under late light with a quiet heart. The shop was dark, but the oven was still warm. She placed her hand on the door and felt the soft heat. She smiled in the quiet and spoke to the empty room. "I was a girl with a dream," she said. "Now I am a baker and a teacher. I will keep going." The next morning, she wrote a short message and taped it near the door. "This story teaches us simple truths," the note said. "Work feeds hope. Kindness builds bridges. Practice makes strong hands and clear words." She opened the door, and the day began. People came, and the line moved like a slow river. The clinic's order waited in clean boxes by the wall. The school bell rang in the distance like a small song. Elara stood at the counter with her steady hands. She met each pair of eyes with a warm look. She spoke with simple words and a clear voice. "Good morning," she said. "Warm bread. Fair price." She felt the past sit quietly in a chair near the oven. She felt the future step in line with a calm smile. She stood between them with her work and her will. "Dreams are not free," she whispered once more. "But I am not free either. If I do not try, I will keep earning this life, one small loaf at a time." Spring came with bright mornings and long soft light. Elara woke before dawn and opened the door to the street. The bell on the frame sang a small note as the air moved. The oven hummed like a calm friend. The room smelled like warm grain and clean hope. She set out rolls and simple loaves in neat rows. A poster on the window announced a city fair in 2 weeks. The fair asked for food, music, and small crafts. The prize for best bakery stand was a sign in the main square. It was a simple wooden sign, but it meant steady eyes and steady feet. Elara read the poster and felt a quiet fire grow. "This is work, not luck," she thought. "This is a window I can open." She wrote a list of flour, yeast, salt, and paper bags. She wrote a plan for batches and times. She left a space for rest, and then she crossed it out. "I will be tired, but I will be fine," she said. She went to the clinic and asked Dr. Hale about the fair. "We will be there," he said. "We will bring the morning crew. We will buy from you and tell others. Your roles kept our line moving through hard days." She thanked him and walked to the school. Ms. Lita stood by the gate and smiled at the poster. "You should tell your story on a card," she said. "Simple words, clear lines. People will read while they wait." Elara nodded and took a small notebook from her bag. She wrote a short text with slow care. "We bake warm bread with simple hands. We serve mornings and families. We earn each day with honest work." Amira added a small drawing of a loaf with steam lines. Rowan came by with a sack on his shoulder. "I found good flour at a fair price," he said. "It is not white as snow, but it smells like fields. It will make strong bread." Elara opened the sack and closed her eyes. The smell was deep and kind. She felt calm as she planned the fair stand. "Dreams are not free," she whispered. "We will earn each step." The next week brought a problem like a sudden wind. The mill's truck broke down on a dark road. The driver called Rowan in the night with bad news. "No flour until Monday," he said. "The road is closed for 2 days." The fair was on Sunday, and the list on the wall had no blank space. Elara stood very still in the warm shop and felt the old fear. "How can I bake for the fair?" she thought. Will I fail after all this work? She looked at the oven and then at the door. She looked at her hands and then at the phone. She called 3 small stores in the district. The first had only cakes and sugar. The second had flour, but it was very high in price. The third said, "We can sell 5 small bags." Elara thanked them all and wrote new numbers. The math was tight, and the coin tin was light. She pressed her lips and made a new plan. "We will bake less, but we will bake with heart," she said. Rowan nodded. "I can ask 2 friends," he said. "They have flour for their own small shops. They may share some bags for today." He walked out and came back with 2 men in heavy coats. They smelled like flour and smoke in the early road. One set down 3 bags and said, "Bring me rolls next week," with a kind nod. The other set down 2 and said, "I like your simple bread," with a shy smile. Elara placed her hands over her heart for a second. "Thank you," she said. "I will pay with bread, and I will pay with thanks." Drex came by at noon with a glossy flyer. "We will serve art at the fair," he said. "We will have lights and music and a glass case. You will be a quiet shadow in our bright line." Elara kept her face calm and her voice even. "I do not chase light," she said. "I build warmth. People remember warmth." Drex tilted his head and spoke in a low tone. "I can sell you flour," he said. "The price is high because times are hard. But you must sign this note. You will bake for me later at cost." Elara read the note and saw the trap like a thin wire. She closed the note and slid it back across the counter. "No," she said. "I will not sell my name." Drex's mouth thinned. "You are proud," he said. "Pride breaks under cold wind." He left as the bell rang and the door sighed. Elara leaned on the counter for a moment and watched the window light. "Will I give up?" she thought. "Can I stand without his flour?" She took one long breath and turned to the oven. "I will stand with my own feet," she said. She baked late into the night with slow, steady hands. She weighed each gram and watched each rise. Amira folded bags and wrote, "Warm, fair," on each one. Rowan moved trays like a quiet river. The oven sang its soft song and kept the room bright. At last, they locked the door and slept a few hours. The fair morning came, with a blue sky and a soft wind. The square was full of stands and banners. Children ran with ribbons like small birds. Music rose and fell like a gentle tide. Elara set her table with a clean cloth and a small sign. She placed the card with her story on a stand. She stacked loaves like brown hills and lined rolls like smooth stones. She wore a simple apron and tied her hair back. The first customers were nurses and orderlies. "We came early," one said with a grin. "We know it sells fast." The line grew in a slow, steady curve. People took deep breaths and smiled as they neared. They read the story card and nodded. "This is clear," one woman said. "This is kind." Drex's hand shone with glass and light. A speaker played soft music. His cakes stood tall like towers. People took photos and pointed. Some moved to his line for the show. Many came to Elara for the smell and the warmth. A city guide in a gray vest stopped and took notes. "Tell me your method," he said. "Simple steps, clear words." Elara spoke slow and calm. "I mix flour, water, yeast, and a little salt," she said. "I knead until the dough is smooth. I let it rise until it is ready. I shape loaves with a steady hand. I bake until the crust sings. I serve while it is warm. I smile with my whole face." The guide wrote and then smiled. "This helps new bakers," he said. "You speak like a teacher." Elara nodded and felt a soft joy. I bake in the morning, she said. I teach at night. Around noon, a wind gust pushed a bright banner loose. It flew across the square and struck Elara's sign. The sign fell and the corner cracked. The crowd gasped, and a child started to cry. Elara picked up the sign and checked the crack. It was not deep. She set it back with calm hands. She crouched to the child's level and smiled. "It is okay," she said. "The bread is safe. Bread is brave." The child sniffed and then laughed at the phrase. "Bread is brave," he said, and the small storm passed. When the judges came, they tasted without show. They ate in small bites and asked short, clear questions. "How did you adapt to the flour problem?" one asked. Elara answered with a firm voice. "I asked my neighbors," she said. "I paid with bread and thanks. I used less and planned better. Small steps still moved me forward." The judges wrote notes in quiet lines. At the end of the day, a bell rang. The crowd moved toward the small stage under the plane trees. The air smelled like sugar and smoke and hot oil. A band played a light tune and then fell quiet. A city host lifted a card and spoke with a smile. "For art and show," he said. "The ribbon goes to Drex." People clapped and took more photos. Drex bowed and lifted his glass prize. He smiled like a stage light. The host lifted another card. "For service and heart," he said. "The sign in the main square goes to Elara, for warm, simple bread." Elara felt the sound rise around her like a soft wave. She walked to the stage with steady steps. The host shook her hand and pointed to the wooden sign. It had her shop name in clear letters. "This will stand by the map for a year," he said. "People will see and come." Elara took the sign and held it like a child. "Dreams are not free," she said into the small mic. "We earned this with work." The crowd clapped again, warm and long. Rowan whistled, Amir cried and laughed, and nurses waved their caps. Miss Letta stood at the edge and pressed her hands to her heart. Drex watched with a thin face, then looked away. That evening, Elara hung the new sign in her shop. She stood back with her family and her friends. The room glowed like a clear evening after rain. She felt the years of work settle in her bones like peace. "Nothing in life is free," she said softly. "Everything good is earned with work." Weeks passed with calm mornings and bright classes. Elara's English grew clean and strong. She taught with simple words and a kind smile. She used past simple to tell stories of work and hope. She used short lines that made sense to tired minds. One night, a new student stayed after class. He held his book with both hands. "I am 45, he said. "I failed many times. I think I cannot learn." Elara looked at him and saw her old fear in his eyes. She spoke slow and clear. "Nothing worth having comes easy," she said. "You can learn. You must work. Small steps still count. Read with your finger under the line. Speak to a mirror. Write 5 clear sentences each day. You will grow." The man nodded and wiped his eyes. "I will try," he said. Elara watched him go and felt the room breathe with her. She wrote a note for the wall. "Work feeds hope," it said. "Kindness builds bridges. Practice makes clear words." One gray morning, the river rose again after long rain. People watched the water climb the banks like a slow, dark animal. Elara opened the door and smelled the wet air. She remembered the day the river broke the town. Her chest tightened, but her hands stayed steady. She filled bags with bread and called the clinic. "Do you need extra today?" she asked. "Yes," the nurse said. "Send what you can." Elara baked and packed and sent boxes with Rowan. She called the school and told Miss Letta she would be late. Then she set a small basket near the door with a hand note. "I Free bread for wet feet, it said. Warmth first. Talk later. People came in with wet coats and tired eyes. They took a piece and held it like a small fire. They said thank you with quiet voices. Elara counted the cost and felt no fear. I will earn this back, she thought. Right now, I give. The water fell by evening, and the street shone under weak light. Elara locked the door and leaned on the counter. She felt tired to the bone, but her heart was light. You earn your dream, she said to the room. You earn your name. You earn your peace. That night, she sat with her family and wrote 4 short lines on a card. What was, she wrote, a girl with a dream and empty hands. What changed, she wrote. Work each day, many small fails, no stop. What she got, she wrote. A warm shop, a steady voice, a strong heart. What it teaches, she wrote. Work feeds hope. Simple words can open doors. She taped the card by the oven and smiled. Then she turned off the light and let the warm dark hold the room. In the quiet, the key phrase rose one more time like a friend. Dreams are not free, she whispered. But I am not free either. If I do not try, I will keep earning this life, one small loaf at a time. Summer came, with bright mornings and a clear blue sky. The small shop was warm, and the oven was steady like a heart. Elara woke before dawn and shaped dough with calm hands. Steam rose like soft breath, and the room smelled kind. People were coming early and leaving with warm bags. She spoke with simple words and a steady voice. Good morning, she said. Warm bread. Fair price. One hot afternoon, a man in a stiff vest came to the door. He held a clipboard and a pen like a small sword. I am from the city office, he said. We changed the stand rules. You must sign new papers and pay a small fee. Elara wiped flour from her hands and stood straight. How much is the fee? She asked. The man told the number, and it stood heavy in the air. It was not huge, but it would cut into flour, yeast, and rent. He pointed to a date in red ink. 10 days, he said. Bring papers and the fee, or you must close. He left, and the bell on the door rang once like a warning. Elara looked at the oven, and then at the small tin. She counted coins, and saw the tight line. What will I do now, she thought. Will I give up the space I earned? She sat for a moment and listened to the steady hum. Dreams are not free, she whispered. I will earn this too. She called Dr. Hale and spoke with care. The city asked for a fee, she said. I can pay, but it will be heavy. Can we move next month's order forward by a week? Dr. Hale paused and then spoke with a kind tone. We can pay today, he said. Your rolls fed tired hands for months. We trust you. She thanked him and set the phone down with a soft hand. She called Rowan and told him the date. I will bring flour on account, he said. You will pay in 2 weeks. Your word is strong. She called Ms. Lita and asked for advice on the papers. Bring your simple books, Ms. Lita said. We will fill forms with clear words. Do not fear long lines. Bring water and a snack. Elara laughed a little and wrote a list. The next morning, she stood in the city office with a small folder. People were waiting and moving slowly in a warm hall. A fan turned above, and the air was heavy but calm. Elara was holding her number and thinking of dough. She was counting minutes like small coins. When her number came, she stepped to the desk with a steady breath. I brought the papers, she said. I sell bread near the clinic. The clerk looked at the forms and at her neat handwriting. She. He stamped a page and slid a new one across the desk. Do her. You must add a short note, he said. Describe your product in simple words. Elara smiled and wrote with care. Warm bread, simple rolls, fair price, she wrote, made each morning for families and workers. The clerk read it and nodded once. Good, he said. Your words are clear. She paid the fee and left the office with a light step. The sun was bright, and the street was a river of feet. She stood still for a second and breathed out. You earn your name, she thought. You earn your peace. But trouble did not sleep for long. One day, Drax sent a sharp letter to the clinic. He wrote that Elara's bread was not modern or safe, because it was too simple. He used long words and a cold tone. The clinic called Elara, with worry in their voices. We got a complaint, a nurse said. The letter says we should buy from a modern place. Elara felt her stomach turn, but her voice stayed calm. I have clean methods, she said. I show my kitchen. I use fresh flour, clean water, and simple salt. I deliver warm and on time. Dr. Hale asked for a meeting in the morning. Elara cleaned every surface until it shone. She labeled jars with simple tags. She wrote steps on a card near the sink. Wash hands, clean table, weigh, mix, knead. The clinic staff came and watched with care. Elara spoke slow and showed each step. I check the dough, she said. I listen for the crust to sing. I pack in clean boxes. Dr. Hale nodded and asked short questions. Nurses wrote notes and looked at the oven light. When they left, Dr. Hale shook her hand. We stay with you, he said. You serve with skill and heart. Elara stood alone for a minute and let the quiet fill her. Will I give up because of a letter? She thought. No, words cannot break work. That week, class was about past events with short lines. Miss Lita asked for a model story. Elara stood at the board and wrote in clear chalk. I baked bread, she wrote. A man sent a cold letter. I showed my kitchen. The clinic stayed. She turned to the class and smiled. We use past simple, she said. We tell what happened. We speak with calm. Amira raised her hand and asked, what if a new letter comes? Elara looked at the window light and chose her words. We answer with work, she said. We do not hide. We show our steps. We use simple truth. Summer was hot, and the street was bright and loud. People were walking and talking and laughing in warm waves. One day, a boy ran inside with wide eyes. A truck hit a pole, he said. The power is down on this block. The oven's hum stopped, and the room grew still. Dough was rising on the table like sleeping hills. Elara felt the panic knock at the door of her chest. What will I do now, she thought. Will the dough fall and break my day? She covered the bowls with clean cloths and opened the window. The air was warm, but moving. She called Rowan and asked about power on his street. We have light, he said. Bring the trays. We will bake in shifts. Elara and Amira carried trays through the heat like careful dancers. People moved aside and held the doors. Sweat ran down their backs, but their steps were sure. In Rowan's back room, the oven was glowing like a small sun. They worked in quiet rhythm, and time was moving like a slow wheel. Rolls came out golden, and loaves sang when tapped. Elara smiled with tired eyes. Small steps still move me forward, she said. They returned to the shop when the power came back. A city worker fixed the pole and waved to the street. All good, he said. Sorry for the stop. Elara thanked him with a roll and a kind word. She leaned on the counter and breathed deep. Dreams are not free, she whispered. But help is real when work is real. Days flowed like warm honey across the season. The new sign in the square brought steady feet. People came with soft voices and left with full hands. Some asked for advice on making bread at home. Elara wrote small cards with clear steps. Mix, rest, knead, Rest, shape, listen for the crust to sing. One evening, her brother came to the door with bright eyes. He held a small guitar with a crack in the wood. "I want to learn," he said. "I want to play for our shop on weekends." Elara touched the crack and smiled. "We can fix this," she said. "We can earn for lessons." She placed a small jar by the counter with a simple note. "Music jar for my brother," the note said. "If you like the sound, add a coin." People smiled and dropped small coins with soft clinks. The jar filled slowly, and the boy learned simple songs. On a calm Saturday, he sat on a chair and played 3 notes. The room was warm, and people were listening with kind faces. The music was simple, but it was true. "You earn your dream," Elara thought. "You do not find it, you grow it." One late afternoon, Drek stood in the door like a shadow. His eyes were tired, and his voice was low. "A big chain is coming to our street," he said. "They have ads, coffee machines, and bright chairs. They will take our lines. We should join. We should sign a supply deal and survive." Elara looked at him and saw fear, not pride. She felt a soft pull in her chest, but her ground stayed strong. "I will not sell my name," she said. "I will not hide my work inside a box." Drax took a breath and tried again. "Then teach me simple bread," he said. "Teach me one honest loaf. I forgot how to make it with just hands." Elara was quiet for a long second. She remembered cold letters and thin smiles. She also remembered hungry mornings and warm help. "Come on Sunday evening," she said at last. "After I close, I will show you my steps. I will not do your work. You will do it." Drex nodded once and left without a glance at the shelves. On Sunday, he came with rolled sleeves and clean hands. He stood by the table like a student. "Mix," Elara said. "Rest, knead, rest, shape, bake." He followed the steps and frowned at the slow pace. "This is hard," he said. "My hands hurt." Elara nodded. "Good hurt," she said. "It makes strong bread and clear mind." When the loaf came out, it was brown and simple and true. Drex tapped the crust and listened like a child. "It sings," he said. He looked at the floor and then at Elara. "Thank you." He left quietly, and the street swallowed his steps. Elara washed the table and looked at the door. She felt a gentle light inside. Kindness builds bridges, she thought. Work makes them strong. Autumn came with sharp air and quick nights. The clinic asked for a new kind of roll with seeds. "Yatsin Rusuni, I soda a lot." The school asked for a morning class for parents. The shop stayed warm, and the line stayed kind. One evening, Ms. Letta brought a small envelope. "A literacy fund saw your cards," she said. "They want to support free classes for workers. They offer a small grant for books and lights." Elara opened the envelope and read the simple terms. She saw no traps, only clear help. "We can teach on Tuesdays," she said. "We can read short stories and write small notes." The first free class was full of quiet faces and tired hands. Elara spoke slow and clear and kind. She wrote a new key line on the board. "Work feeds hope," she wrote. "Simple words can open doors." People copied the line and read it out loud. The room felt like a warm river moving one slow meter at a time. After class, a man stayed with his cap in his hands. "I cannot spell well," he said. "I hide it at work. I want to stop hiding." Elara looked him in the eyes and spoke with care. "We will write each day," she said. "We will read each day. You will be seen. You will not hide." Winter teased the city with early wind. The shop's windows fogged with soft breath. The oven was glowing, and the bell was singing. Elara stood in the doorway for a moment and watched the street. She thought of the river that rose, the stolen tin, the broken oven, The false alarm, the stage and ribbon, the wooden sign, the letter from Drex, the power stop, the music jar, the Sunday lesson, and the full class of tired hands. Her chest filled with a quiet, steady heat. "Remember," she whispered, "nothing in life is free. Everything good is earned with work." And even when fear was rising, I kept going. She turned, lifted a tray, and stepped into the warm light. She was a baker and a teacher, moving in small, strong steps. She was earning her dream, one loaf, one lesson, one clear word at a time. Winter settled in with quiet snow and slow gray light. Elara woke early and lit the oven with careful hands. The shop windows fogged and drew small circles of breath. She shaped dough and listened to the soft hum. The line outside grew one step at a time. People stamped their feet and smiled in the cold. "Good morning," she said. "Warm bread, fair price." A city inspector came with a neat bag and a calm face. He looked at the sink and the soap on the shelf. He checked the tongs and the clean paper strips. "Show me your steps," he said. Elara washed her hands and spoke slow. "I weigh, I mix, I knead, I rest, I shape, I bake, I cool." He watched in silence and then wrote 2 notes. "Good order," he said. "Keep the tools clean. Keep the labels clear." He left, and the bell on the door rang once. Elara leaned on the counter for a breath and let the fear pass. "Dreams are not free," she whispered. "I will earn this peace every day." A week later, the mill raised the price of flour. The number hurt like a small stone in her shoe. She stood with the list and a pencil in her hand. "What will I do now?" she thought. "Will I raise prices and lose trust?" She made a choice with a clear mind. "Na sober kana quiet." She baked smaller loaves at the same price. She wrote a card and set it by the tray. "Na so what true, my decorishu. I'd me say." "Small loaves for a short time," the card said. "Same taste, same care." A man frowned and asked, "Why smaller?" Elara replied firmly, "Flour cost rose. I will not lie. I will keep it fair." The man nodded and took the small loaf. "Honesty is warm," he said, and the line moved on. At night, the shop became a quiet classroom. Elara stacked chairs and set a small lamp near the wall. She wrote simple words on a board with slow strokes. Students came with tired hands and bright eyes. "We will read," she said. "We will speak. We will write 5 clear lines." She handed out a short story she wrote herself. It was about a bridge and a lantern in the rain. The lines were short and the words were kind. A woman read with a shaking voice, then smiled. "I can do this," she said. "I can read my own life." Drex's shop lights grew dim after the new chain opened. Bright chairs and loud music filled the street across the way. One evening, Drex stood in Elara's doorway with a small paper bag. His voice was quiet and bare. "I am closing for a while," he said. "I hired too many hands. I forgot the bread." Elara looked at him and felt a steady calm. "Oh, you can start simple," she said. "You can shape one honest loaf." Drex nodded and held out the paper bag. "Seeds for your rolls," he said. "A gift for the clinic." Elara took the bag and nodded once. "Thank you," she said. "Work lifts us both." Snow fell hard one morning and blocked the side road. The clinic called and asked, "Can you deliver early?" Elara tied a scarf and packed 2 boxes. Rowan cleared a path with a wide shovel. Amira wrapped rolls and counted with quick fingers. They walked through white wind with heads low and arms strong. Nurses opened the door and clapped in warm coats. Dr. Hale smiled and pressed Elara's hands. "You bring heat on a cold day," he said. "You bring calm to a fast room." That week, The school invited Elara to speak at a small hall. "Tell your story in clear English," Ms. Letta said. "Use simple words. Keep your breath slow." Elara wrote her notes on a clean card with firm lines. She stood on the stage in front of old walls and young faces. Lights were soft, and her heart beat steady. She spoke with care and looked at each row. "I was a girl with a dream and empty hands," she said. "I sold bread by the road. I studied at night. I failed many times. I did not stop. I worked each day. I spoke with people. I kept my promise to myself. Dreams are not free. You must earn them." A student raised a hand and asked, "What if I am afraid?" Elara thought to herself, "Fear still knocks." And then she replied firmly, "Fear is a light that says, be careful, but continue. Small steps still move you forward." The hall was quiet for a breath, and then warm with soft claps. After the talk, a mother came with her daughter. "She wants to read," the mother said. The girl hid behind her sleeve and peeked with one eye. Elara knelt and smiled with a gentle voice. "We will start with one page," she said. "We will read with a finger under the line. We will grow." Back at the shop, a letter waited on the counter. It was from the city fair office with a clean stamp. Elara opened it with a careful thumb. It invited her to host a small work in words, tent in spring. "Bake and teach," the letter said. "Show simple steps. Speak simple English." Elara felt a soft heat rise in her chest. "This is my path," she thought. "Work feeds hope. Words open doors." She planned a tent with 2 tables and a board. On one table, dough would rest under a cloth. On the other, cards with short steps would wait. On the board, she would write a clear line. "Listen for the crust to sing." The weeks moved like beads on a string. The class wrote stronger lines and spoke with calm voices. The clinic line stayed steady, and the small loaves grew back to full size as the flour price fell. Drax rented a tiny corner and sold one honest loaf. He stood behind a plain table and nodded to each face. One Sunday evening, Elara closed the shop and sat by the oven with a cup of tea. Her brother played a slow tune on the fixed guitar. The room glowed like a small sun in a dark field. Elara watched the steam from her cup rise and vanish. She remembered the river that rose, the stolen tin, the broken oven, the false alarm, the stage and ribbon, the wooden sign, the cold letter, the power stop, the music jar, the Sunday lesson, the full class, and the snow path to the clinic. She felt the past rest like a quiet friend. She felt the future wait like a kind guest at the door. She spoke into the warm air with a steady voice. "Remember," she said, "nothing in life is free. Everything good is earned with work. I will keep going. I will keep earning this life, one small loaf and one clear word at a time." The bell on the door moved in the soft heat and made one small sound. Elara stood, set her cup down, and reached for the next tray. Her hands were steady, her steps were sure, and her heart was light with simple strength. Spring settled into the city with pale sun and thin wind. Elara planned the spring tent with clear steps and calm mind. She drew a map of 2 tables and 1 small board. She listed bowls, scales, cloths, and a spare apron. She added soap, water, and clean towels to the list. She wrote simple lines for cards in large letters. "Wash hands. Mix simple dough. Listen for the crust to sing." She practiced her talk at night in the worn shop. Her brother played slow notes, and steam rose like soft ghosts. "I will bake and teach," she said to the empty room. "I will speak with clear words and a steady voice." On the fair morning, the square was bright and busy. People carried paper cups and small flags and wide smiles. Elara set the first table with bowls and flour. She set the second with warm loaves and simple cards. The board showed short steps in calm chalk. A child came near and touched the card with a finger. "What is need?" he asked with a shy look. Elara smiled and showed her hands on the dough. "I press and fold," she said slowly. "I push and pull until smooth." A group watched with quiet eyes and nodding heads. Elara spoke in short sentences and kept her breath slow. "We keep our words simple," she said with care. "We keep our hands clean and our work honest." A man in a sharp jacket walked up with a clipboard. "What's yours a chain?" He wore a badge from the big chain across the street. His voice was thin and dry like old paper. "You blocked the lane," he said. "You must move your tent back." Elara looked at the chalk line on the ground. The legs stood inside the clear, painted mark. She held up her paper with the city stamp. "I stand inside the line," she said. The office gave approval. The man narrowed his eyes and tapped the board. "No boards allowed," he said. "They can fall in the wind." A city marshal came, with steady steps and kind eyes. He read the paper and checked the tent poles twice. "She is fine," he said. "The board is tied. The line is clear." The man left with a small frown and fast shoes. Elara felt fear rise and then fall like a short wave. She wiped the board and smiled at the waiting group. "We adapt," she said gently. "Small steps still move us forward." She showed how dough rested under a clean cloth. She showed how a finger test told the right moment. She spoke in clear English and short, warm lines. Miss Leda stood near and watched with proud eyes. Amira handed cards to people with soft hands. Rowan kept flour ready and bowls clean and bright. "Dreams are not free," Elara said to the crowd. "We earn them with work and kind patience." A local writer came with a small camera and a pen. She asked for 3 sentences about Elara's path. Elara stood straight and chose her words with care. "I started with a dream and empty hands," she said. "I baked each day and learned at night. I did not stop." The writer smiled and took a photo of the board. "Simple words help the city breathe," she said. "Makar Kuninkalaya. People will read this." At noon, her brother tuned the guitar for a small song. A string snapped with a sad sound and jumped away. The boy's face fell and his hands lost all air. Elara knelt and rested a hand on his shoulder. "We fix things," she said softly. "We breathe once and adapt." She borrowed a spare string from a friendly band. The boy tied and tuned with slow, careful hands. He played a small, bright tune that fit the wind. People clapped and left coins in the music jar. "You earn your song," Elara whispered with a smile. The big chain set free samples with bright sticks and loud calls. "New city taste," their team shouted in strong voices. A few people turned, but many stayed by the warm loaves. "Simple bread fed me when I was tired," one nurse said. "I trust hands more than lights," a father added quietly. Elara felt the crowd's calm settle into her bones. She taught 3 short lessons and baked 4 small batons. She gave tiny pieces to children with careful tongs. She asked 2 students to read 1 card out loud. "Mextoine, rest, need, rest, shape, bake," they read proudly. The city marshal returned and folded his arms with ease. "You kept a clear lane," he said with a small nod. "You kept calm when pushed. That is good order." Elara thanked him and tidied flour from the table. "We keep order," she said. "Order keeps us." Late in the day, Drex came and stood at the edge. He wore a plain coat and held a paper bag of seeds. His voice was quiet and his eyes were softer now. "Your tent is full," he said. Mine was quiet with bright lights. Elara met his look and kept her tone gentle. "One honest loaf can fill a room," she said. "Shine helps the eye, but warmth helps the heart." Drex nodded and glanced at the cards on the table. "Teach me to write steps like this," he said. "I will speak to my staff like humans, not parts." Elara gave him a spare card and a thick pen. "Short lines," she said. "One step per breath. One breath per line." Evening came with long shadows and a clear bell. Elara packed the bowls and folded the warm cloths. The board went flat, and the cards went in a box. The writer returned with a small printed sheet. "Your story is on the city page," she said. "We used your line about honest work." Elara held the sheet like a warm cup in both hands. "Thank you," she said. "Words can feed too." The next week brought a new test in quiet shoes. A note from the landlord asked for a meeting at noon. A developer made an offer. The note said tight, "We will review all small leases this month." Elara sat at the counter and watched the oven light. "What will I do now?" she thought with a slow ache. "Will I lose this corner and break my line?" She opened her notebook and wrote clean numbers. She listed months, rent, orders, and small savings. She wrote names of neighbors who leaned on her bread. She wrote clinic and school and workers at dawn. She added free class and work in words tense. She breathed once and called Dr. Hale for a letter. She called the school for a note about the classes. She called Rowan for history on supply and trust. They sent short letters with strong, simple lines. At noon, she stood in a small, cold office with calm eyes. The landlord read the notes and tapped the desk twice. "A chain can pay more," he said in a flat tone. "Why should I keep this rent low for your shop?" Elara kept her voice steady and her words small. "My shop serves the clinic at dawn," she said. "It teaches workers at night. It feeds families near here. People do not travel far for simple bread. They walk." The landlord looked at the seal on the clinic letter. He read the line from the school about free class. He sighed and leaned back in his chair with a groan. "I will not raise rent this year," he said, "but keep the street clean and calm." Elara nodded once and felt the ground return to her feet. She walked out and stood in the weak sun with closed eyes. "You earn your name," she thought. "You earn your place." That night, fear still knocked like soft rain on a window. Elara wrote her key lines again on a clean page. "Success is not given. It is earned," she wrote. "Small steps still move me forward," she wrote. "Dreams are not free," she wrote and underlined. She taped the page near the sink where steam rose. She spoke to the warm room with a soft, firm voice. "I will keep my promise," she said. "Work feeds hope." A month later, a small grant bought brighter lamps for class. New books came with short stories and clean pictures. The room was warm and clear for tired eyes. A man who could not spell his name wrote it twice. He smiled through tears and pressed the page to his chest. "Oh, her God, you're writing. I found myself," he said, and the room breathed with him. Drex began to send one worker each week after hours. They learned to knead, shape, and listen for thin song. "This is slow," one said, and Elara nodded with care. "Slow builds strong," she said. "Strong stands when the wind comes." One windy afternoon, a sign fell across the street. People jumped, and a child cried under the loud noise. Elara crossed fast and lifted the heavy frame with Rowan. She checked the child and wiped his tears with a clean cloth. She led him to the warm shop and gave him water. "Bread is brave," he said, remembering the fair's small storm. Elara smiled and wrapped a roll with gentle hands. "You are brave too," she said. "You stood and breathed." Winter turned to bright days with thin ice on roofs. The river stayed in its bed like a calm snake. The clinic line was steady, and the shop bell sang. Elara saved coins in a small tin for a second oven. One night, a student came with a test fee notice. "I can pass," she said, "but I cannot pay this week." Elara looked at the tin and then at the paper. She felt the old pull between now and later. She breathed once and made a clear choice with calm. She paid the fee and pushed the tin back on the shelf. "We will earn the second oven," she said. "We will earn it slow." The student covered her mouth and cried into her sleeve. "I will not forget this," she said. "I will help someone later." Elara nodded and cleaned the board with slow circles. "Kindness builds bridges," she said. "Work makes them strong." Spring returned, and the city asked her to speak at the library. She wrote a clear talk with short lines and warm truth. She practiced at dawn, while loaves rose in quiet bowls. On the night of the talk, fear came in a thin coat. Elara felt her hands shake and her breath run small. She stood behind the curtain and closed her eyes once. She thought of the bus stop, the stolen tin, the false alarm. She thought of the stage and ribbon and the wooden sign. She thought of the snow path, the letters, the class, the boys' song. She opened her eyes and stepped into the clean light. She spoke with simple words and a steady, kind voice. "I started with nothing but a dream," she said. "I work each day. I failed and learned. I did not stop. Today I bake. Today I teach. Work fed my hope. Words opened my doors. Remember, nothing in life is free. Everything good is earned with work." The room held its breath, and then warmed with long claps. Elara bowed once, and felt a quiet tide move through her. She walked home under bright stars and soft wind. The shop waited like a small lamp on a dark street. She touched the door and felt the wood warm under her palm. "You earn your dream," she whispered. "You earn it again tomorrow." She turned the key and stepped into the gentle hum. The oven glowed. The trays shone. Her heart was light. Years later, on a clear morning, Elara turned the key to a second small shop near the quiet river. The bell sang a soft note, and warm light filled the room. On the wall, there was a wooden sign from the city fair, and by the door, there were cards with simple steps for new readers. People came in with calm faces and left with warm bags and careful hands. Elara looked at the shelves, at the clean oven glow, and at the small class corner with books and lamps. She spoke to her family and friends in clear English. "I started with nothing but a dream," she said. "I worked each day. I failed many times. I did not stop. Today I bake. Today I teach. Work fed my hope. Words opened my doors." She walked to the door and saw Rowan, Miss Letta, Dr. Hale, Amira, and her brother with the fixed guitar. She felt the past sit like a kind friend, and the future wait like a warm guest. She wrote one last line on a clean card and taped it near the oven. "Work feeds hope. Simple words open doors. Small steps still move you forward." She turned to the room and spoke once more with a steady voice. "Remember, nothing in life is free. Everything good is earned with work." Then she lifted the first tray of the day, and the story closed like a warm loaf, singing in quiet air.